Donald Trump extremists would like for death and destruction, murderous mobs to take over the country. Well, let's get into it. We knew this would happen. Let's put him up full mast. The man who radicalized hundreds of thousands of individuals in this country and frankly beyond, Donald Trump himself. Extreme supporters of Donald Trump have met news of his federal indictment with visions of violence and retribution. At the Donald, a forum for ultra-MAGA Trump supporters, users demanded public executions and other forms of lynching to avenge the federal prosecution of former President Donald Trump for the alleged mishandling of state secrets at Lago after he was no longer president. There's more. Calls for violence appeared in comment threads responding to posts on the front page of the forum Thursday night. After news broke of Trump's latest legal troubles, the most extreme comments were written in response to a fanciful post insisting, quote, the only solution to the DOJ's efforts to lock up Trump would be to vote him back into the presidency so Trump could pardon himself and begin arresting those guilty of insurrection and sedition. A user named Belloc186 offered a far deadlier fix, quote, the only way this country ever becomes anything like the Constitution says this country should be is if thousands of traitorous rats are publicly executed, end quote. Commenter Dog Face Killer quickly chimed in to offer supplies. I got some rope somewhere in the garage, and heavy_metal_patriot added. Han says we can borrow the Flammenwerfer, a reference to a battlefield flamethrower used by German soldiers in World War II. The proposal for mass killing struck user Black-pilled MAGA as going too far. Quote, doesn't have to be thousands, just a few dozen would do. Shoot, would stop immediately. But user Nerdrum1 insisted taking out a few elites wouldn't make the difference, suggesting the number of dead required was on a genocidal scale, millions. The real problem is the people that vote for them. As long as they exist, the problem can't be solved. A user named heavy_metal_patriot concurred, correct. It might be tempting to dismiss these calls for mass murder as loose talk among angry MAGA supporters. Yet there is a dark history here. In a previous iteration, the Donald, the forum, was used to help plot and promote the violence at the Capitol in 2021. As detailed in the final report of the House January 6th committee, including by users who openly discuss surrounding and occupying the US Capitol. The only thing that's going to change the course of this country from its present heading of Marxist dictatorship, the commenter wrote, is if Trump stands up in court and says to all of my supporters, the tree needs watering. And now is the time. Meanwhile, Governor Ron DeSantis, let's put him up. He has vowed to restore the name of US Army base in North Carolina to that of Confederate General. The Raleigh News Observer reported at a North Carolina GOP convention on Friday, DeSantis said that if elected president, he would change the name of the newly christened Fort Liberty back to Fort Bragg. It was changed by way of a bipartisan vote because Bragg, well, stood for things antithetical to the country. Let me deal with DeSantis, and then I'm going to go back to Trump and his supporters. DeSantis is literally saying, I want to take away your liberty. Because right now, the army installation is called liberty. I want to take away liberty, and I want to give you back brag. Bragg was a representation of bigotry, racism, and treason. Literally, the Confederacy fought against the interest and the government, known as the United States, committed treason. What sense does it make to put the name of a traitor to a nation on the nation's military assets, unless the military assets of the nation actually still, represent the same idea they did back then? He wants to take away liberty and give you brag. Donald Trump, he's not going to tell his supporters to stop with this violence, with this rhetoric, talks of mass killings, executions. No. Why? Because he's banking on it. He was depending on that to scare those who are prosecuting him today. He's depending on that to scare the Republicans who are running against him in the primary today. It is part of his strategy. These individuals are hand in glove. These folks are dangerous. Now, I don't know about you, but in the words of my dear brother, Dr. Cornel West, I would prefer to go down swinging. Bennie, thoughts?
Yeah, the unfortunate reality is we won't really understand our present situation unless we understand the historical context behind it and how really this has been at the heart of the United States of America since its founding. Because of course, if you read the Constitution completely devoid of any understanding of context, you might get this idea that like, oh yeah, freedom, democracy, all these things, his founding fathers are talking about all these noble ideas. But ultimately at the end of the day, it was to serve white supremacy, right? The United States was founded by and for white supremacists. And so when right-wingers talk about the Constitution, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about phrases like manifest destiny, for example, which should, if you really understand history, manifest destiny should have some of the same like connotations and feelings. It should evoke some of the same feelings as the phrase final solution, because that's literally what it was, an extermination campaign across the entire continent, right? And so fundamentally, when you see these right wingers talk about liberty and freedom, they're not talking about it in the literal sense that like regular people would. They're talking about it in the sense of the way the founding fathers did, where it was sort of this under the breath, like, oh, liberty and freedom for specifically super privileged white folks. And even if that means, going on like mass genocidal campaigns against people that we don't like, right? That really is at the heart of, unfortunately, the United States. And the United States has always had a very persistent thread of right-wing violence that's always defined a significant portion of our political reality, right? Everything from lynchings to sundown towns to like random like white supremacist terrorist attacks, and then obviously institutions with the state through like segregation and slavery and all of these different things has really cooperated to create an environment of fear and terror. And anytime there's a fear among like these right wingers that society might become more equal, that society might improve in some way, they threaten violence like this. And that's why literally Republicans have been talking about the Civil War since like the Civil War. They've been talking about wanting to have another one. And I guess like the little party switch thing, whatever, right wingers in the United States have always like fantasized over like violence and fantasize over doing some sort of civil war, because fundamentally at the end of the day, they do not believe in the humanity of marginalized people. They don't think that black and brown folks should be treated as human. They don't think that queer folks should be treated as human. They think that women should be property. And fundamentally, they are more than willing to use violence to achieve those aims. It is why they both at the same time celebrate police whenever police victimize marginalized people, but then go after and attack police whenever police do things like arrest white supremacists that are like, illegally purchasing firearms or something like that.
Exactly, very well said. And at this point, no one should have any ambiguity as to what "Make America Great Again" means.